All right. I'm a slam virgin, I thought I'd say. Okay. When I was 12 years old, it was 1969. Please don't do the math and know how old I am. My mother sat my sister and I down and said, your father and I are getting a divorce. And it came as such a shock. I couldn't believe it. We grew up in a Roman Catholic neighborhood where I don't think anybody ever got a divorce. And I knew there would be a stigma attached to it. I remember feeling ashamed and embarrassed. And I said, why would you do such a thing? And she said, your father and I just don't love each other. I was like, so? Anyway, I'd seen my friends' parents. They was like, I'll punch you in the face, things like that. Nothing in my house. But they also never hugged or kissed or anything. So I kind of got it. And we had to go through a period of, being broke, when you lose that income. And my mom had a little bit of celebrity. She was on the Steve Allen Show as a singer back in the day with Andy Williams. And, next thing you know, if you don't keep that up, the doors slam shut on you. And so she didn't really have a skill set, but she was brave. Anyway, the Roman Catholic Church, being in an Italian neighborhood, all my friends' last names like Megaracci, Tesserero, Venero. We all went to St. Matthew's Church, and my mom went down and argued with the priest about who said she should stay married, and then we never went to church again. I'm surprised the devil isn't in me right now. But anyway, I always thought that she didn't want alimony because of a pride thing. I mean, it was women's lib. That was all rising, Gloria Steinem, all that stuff. And she kind of learned about what that was like when she tried to get a replacement credit card, and they declined her and said, but what's your husband's new address, right? Shocking. Anyway, after about 3 months, when I thought it was pride for the reason that she didn't get the alimony, it kind of became clear that it was more like guilt. I met Mr. Scott, who was soon to be my stepfather. Mr. Scott was handsome, charming, and a genius musician. And it filled the house. I mean, he brought his grand piano in. They'd play two-handed piano. He wrote He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother, A Taste of Honey, covered by the Beatles. And as a budding songwriter, I thought this was the greatest thing ever to have somebody like a resource like this in my house. It made me forget that my dad was in like a dingy apartment in New York City for a minute. And I like to say that people have ego boundaries when they're in love in the beginning, where that all comes down and everything goes. It's like a girl watch football and say she likes it because, they'll make that compromise and you do things. And little by little, though, the who you are comes back. As the walls start to come up again, you see who you are. And he was a huge drinker and a nasty drunk. And his thing was double shots of Dewar's, chase it with a Heineken. And then he would do stuff like say to me, there's a guy, I was playing a Scott Joplin rag. He goes, I'll show you who really knows how to play that, get in the car. And I didn't know how drunk he was till I was in the car, and he said, we're going to go through every red light all the way to New York City because red lights weren't made for me. People have to watch out for me. All right, I'm like 13. I'm like, what? Cars are beeping, and I think, all right, I'm going to die. I'm waiting for him to slow down somewhere so I can roll out of a moving car. And this is way before cell phones, so you can't call for help or anything. I had a brother, I think he was 7 at the time, and he would squeeze his hand, be like, this is how a man shakes hands. And I'd see my brother wincing, and I wanted to kill him. And I thought, we got to get rid of this guy. So we would do things. He'd leave for a little bit, and then my mother would be so sad that it became a choice. Do we become sad, or do we let her be so sad? But she had paralyzing depression when she was alone. Anyway, we'd let him come back, and he'd be good for a while, and then he'd say, this is dinner. I have a lot of money, and I can have you killed by a hitman. Now, I remember all my friends that were Italian. I used to look at him and say, I don't have any money, and I can have you killed by a hitman. Banana pudding, anybody? It was like that. Well, it all came to a head this one day. He didn't answer the phone. They had had an argument. My mom went up to the studio that he had rented and knocked on the door. There was an album playing. He wouldn't answer the door. She knocked harder, started saying his name, and all she could think of, because then you hear She said the song stopped mid-song, so you knew somebody was in there. Anyway, first thing she went to was, it's another woman. I mean, he cheated on her with his ex-wife. What would stop him from doing this again? So she took our blue Mercury Montego, which was parked right in front of his brand new white Cadillac Coupe de Ville, drove into it twice, side-swiped it, and then drove in front of it and backed up into the grill. Well, when she came home, that was when we all came together. I went out, wiped the nail polish right off the car. My sister's changing her hairstyle and changing her clothes in case anybody could identify her. And when he came over, we were saying the difference between a Mercury Montego was it was steel, and cars were different then. His car was like tinfoil. So when he came over, he was like, "Did you smash my car?" And he looked around the car, didn't see anything. My mother's like, "I don't know how you could have thought that was me." Next thing you know, they were back again. It wasn't long. He was gone for good, and all I could think of was, he died of cancer, but he died clean and sober. And when my mother said, "Do you want to come to the funeral?" I said, "Do I need to stick a stake in his fucking heart?" Anyway, you make your choices, and I look at my mother like somebody who was so brave that she left everything she knew for love and passion. It didn't work out, but that's what I remember about my mother. Thanks.